Hi everyone, I'd like to continue the previous story. I hope you'll keep enjoying it. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Order replaced chaos. Structure replaced randomness. The cosmos, which had been formless and turbulent, now had shape and purpose and predictability. Where once there had been only the mixing of salt and fresh water, now there was a world, a proper world with sky and earth, with rivers and mountains, with day and night, with time and space properly arranged. Anu, the Sky Father, approached Marduk with tears of joy in his eyes. "You have exceeded all our hopes," Anu said. "You have not merely saved us, you have given us a world to live in, a cosmos that makes sense. Truly you are worthy to be king of the gods." The other gods echoed this sentiment. They gathered around Marduk and proclaimed him their king, their leader, their lord. They honored their promise, though in truth, after what they had witnessed, there was no question that Marduk had earned his kingship many times over. Marduk accepted their praise with dignity. He took his place as king, holding the tablet of destinies, the symbol of his authority. His word was now law. His decrees would shape reality. He was the bringer of order, the creator of the world, the victor in the greatest battle the cosmos had ever known. But even as the gods celebrated, even as they rejoiced in their salvation and marveled at the new world Marduk had made, Marduk himself was thinking ahead. A world was made, yes. Sky and earth existed now. Rivers flowed. Stars shone. But a world was not complete with only gods to inhabit it. The cosmos needed more. It needed workers, builders, worshippers. It needed humans. But that, my dear friends, is a story for tomorrow evening. For now, let us pause and reflect on what we have heard. From the destruction of Tiamat came the creation of all we know. The sky above our heads was once her body. The earth beneath our feet was once her flesh. The rivers that give us life flowed from her eyes. Even in death, even in defeat, Tiamat gave birth, though not in the way she had intended. Even in death, even in defeat, Tiamat gave birth, though not in the way she had intended. Is this not a profound truth? That even from violence and destruction, from rage and war, something beautiful can be born. That chaos, when properly ordered, becomes the cosmos. That endings can be beginnings. These are deep matters to ponder as you drift towards sleep. Rest now, my friends. Tomorrow we shall speak of humanity's creation, of our purpose and our place in this world that Marduk made from Tiamat's body. We shall learn why we were made and what the gods expect of us. Until then, sleep peacefully under the sky that was once a dragon, upon the earth that was once chaos made flesh. Good night. Good evening once more, dear friends. Welcome back to our quiet corner where ancient stories find new life. The night is peaceful here in Uruk. I can hear the distant sounds of the city settling down for sleep. A dog barks somewhere in the merchant's quarter. A mother sings a lullaby to her child. The river whispers its eternal song, and here I sit with my lamp and my stories, grateful for your company once more. Tonight we continue our journey through the great tales of creation. We have seen how the world came to be, how Marduk defeated Tiamat and shaped the cosmos from her body. But a world is nothing without someone to live in it, to appreciate it, to give it meaning and purpose. Tonight, we speak of humanity's creation, of why we exist, and of the gods who watch over us. So settle in comfortably. Perhaps pour yourself a cup of something pleasant, and let us begin where we left off, with Marduk newly crowned as king of the gods, standing in the world he had just created. The gods gathered in celebration. They had survived. More than that, they had been given a beautiful new world to inhabit. Mountains rose majestically towards the sky. Rivers flowed with clear water. The sun crossed the heavens in its ordained path. The moon waxed and waned in perfect rhythm. Everything had its place, its purpose, its proper order. The gods began to build their temples and establish their domains. Anu claimed the highest heaven, where he could look down upon all creation. Enlil, the god of wind and storms, took charge of the space between earth and sky, the realm where weather happens and where the fate of harvests is decided. Enlil, the god of wind and storms, took charge of the space between earth and sky, the realm where weather happens and where the fate of harvests is decided. But a world needs maintenance, my friends. Fields must be tended. Canals must be dug to bring water from the rivers to the dry places. Temples must be built and maintained. Food must be grown. Beer must be brewed. All the countless tasks that make civilization possible must be done by someone. At first, the younger gods did this work themselves. They took up hoes and dug irrigation ditches. They carried baskets of earth to build the foundations of temples. They planted barley and harvested it when the time came. They worked hard, these divine laborers, and at first they were content enough. After all, they were building their world, establishing their civilization. But years passed and the work never ended. Dig a canal, and it fills with silt that must be dredged. Plant a field, and next year you must plant it again. Build a temple, and it requires constant maintenance. The work was endless, repetitive, exhausting. The younger gods grew weary. They began to complain among themselves. "Why should we labor like this?" they asked. "We are gods, not slaves. We defeated chaos. We established order. Should we not enjoy the fruits of our victory?" The grumbling grew louder. The work slowed down. Some gods began to refuse their tasks altogether. Tensions rose in the divine realm, and the older gods grew concerned. They had not defeated Tiamat and established order, only to see everything fall apart because the younger gods were tired of working. A great assembly was called. All the gods gathered in the hall of Marduk, that magnificent palace he had built at the center of the cosmos. The issue was clear. Who would do the necessary work to maintain the world? The gods debated long into the night. Some suggested drawing lots to determine who would be the eternal workers. Others proposed rotating the duties so no god would be burdened for too long. But every solution had problems. No god wanted to be consigned to eternal labor. The rotating system would be too complicated and would lead to constant disputes. It was clever who proposed the solution. He stood before the assembly with that thoughtful look he often wore when he had solved a particularly difficult puzzle. We need workers, Ea said, but these workers need not be gods. Why not create a new being, one designed specifically for this purpose? We could make creatures intelligent enough to understand complex tasks, strong enough to perform hard labor but not divine. They would do the work that gods should not have to do. The gods considered this proposal with growing interest. It had merit. But how could such creatures be made? I know how, Ea continued. We will make them from clay, from the very earth they will till and tend. But clay alone is not enough. They need something more. They need something of the divine within them, or they will be nothing but mud shaped like men. Marduk leaned forward on his throne. What do you propose, wise Ea? Ea's answer was both simple and profound. We will take one of the gods who participated in Tiamat's rebellion, one who fought against us, and from his blood we will give these creatures life and intelligence. Let divine blood flow in mortal veins. Let the guilty serve the innocent through their very essence. The gods agreed this was just. Among Tiamat's followers there was one named Kingu, he who had worn the tablet of destinies, he who had commanded the monster army. Kingu had been defeated and captured when Marduk triumphed. Now he would serve a greater purpose. They brought Kingu before the assembly. His fate was decreed. His life would end, but from his death would come something new. In a way, he would never truly die, for his essence would live on in every human ever born. He performed the ritual. It was complex and sacred, requiring all his skill and wisdom. King's blood was mixed with clay from the earth, clay that was rich and red like the soil along the Tigris and Euphrates. Ea spoke words of power over this mixture, shaping it, giving it form. And from this clay and blood, the first humans were made. Not just one or two, but many, enough to do all the work the gods required. They were shaped in the image of the gods, walking upright on two legs, with hands that could grasp tools, with minds that could learn and reason. But these humans were not gods. They were mortal. They would age and die, and new generations would replace them in an endless cycle. They did not have the power of the gods, could not command the winds or shake the earth. They were limited, bounded by time and death and physical weakness. Yet they had something precious within them. They had that spark of divine blood, that piece of King's essence. This gave them intelligence, creativity, the ability to solve problems and make things. They could learn languages and mathematics. They could create art and music. They could ponder the mysteries of existence and ask deep questions about life and death and meaning. Ea looked upon the first humans with satisfaction and perhaps a touch of affection. He had made them well. They would serve the gods' purposes, yes, but they were also interesting in their own right. These clever little creatures with their brief lives and their endless curiosity. The gods taught the first humans what they needed to know: how to plant and harvest barley, how to dig canals and maintain them, how to build temples from mud bricks dried in the sun, how to brew beer from grain, how to make offerings to the gods in the proper way. And here, my friends, we must pause to understand something important. This was the bargain between gods and humans, the fundamental relationship that defines our existence. The gods gave us life, gave us the world to live in, gave us the knowledge we needed to survive. In return, we work to maintain that world and to honor the gods with our offerings and our worship. You might think this unfair. Why should we labor for the gods, but consider what we receive in return? The gods control the rain that waters our crops. They control the sun that makes things grow. They control the rivers that bring life to the desert. When we make offerings at the temple, when we pour out beer for the gods and place bread on their altars, we are not just giving. We are participating in the great exchange that keeps the cosmos functioning. The gods need our service, yes, but we need their power and protection even more. Let me tell you about these gods, these great powers who watch over us and shape our lives. For each god has their own domain, their own personality, their own way of interacting with humanity. First among them, of course, is Marduk, king of the gods. His city is Babylon, that greatest of cities to the north of our Uruk. Marduk is the god of order and justice, the one who defeated chaos and established cosmic law. When we pray to Marduk, we ask for fairness in our dealings, for protection from disorder, for strength to face our challenges. Then there is Anu, the Sky Father, oldest of the gods who survived Tiamat's rage. Anu dwells in the highest heaven, far above the clouds, in a realm so lofty that few other gods ever visit it. He is distant, remote, but his authority is absolute. When we swear oaths, we swear by Anu, for he sees all from his high place and knows when oaths are broken. Enlil is the god of storms and wind, and he is perhaps the most powerful god in practical terms. He lives in the middle realm, between earth and sky, and from there he controls the weather. When Enlil is pleased, gentle rains fall on our fields at the right time, and our crops grow tall and healthy. When Enlil is angry, violent storms tear across the land, destroying everything in their path. Floods come when Enlil wills it. Droughts come when he withholds the rain. Whom some call Enki, is the god of wisdom and sweet water. He is the cleverest of all the gods, the solver of impossible problems, the keeper of secret knowledge. Ea lives in the Apsu, in the freshwater depths beneath the earth. From there, he sends up springs and wells, providing the water that we drink and that keeps us alive in this hot, dry land. Ea is a friend to humanity in a way that other gods are not. He likes us, I think. He takes pleasure in our cleverness, in our ability to solve problems and create new things. When we need wisdom, when we face puzzles that seem impossible, we pray to Ea. When Enlil is angry, violent storms tear across the land, destroying everything in their path. Floods come when Enlil wills it. Droughts come when he withholds the rain. Then there is Inanna, whom the Akkadians call Ishtar. She is the goddess of love and war, of passion and violence, of everything that is intense and overwhelming. Inanna is beautiful beyond description, more lovely than the morning star that bears her name. But she is also dangerous, quick to anger, fierce in her hatreds. When you fall in love, that is Inanna's doing. When your heart burns with desire, she has touched you. But she is also the goddess of battle. Warriors pray to her before going to war, asking her to fill them with courage and strength. She is contradictory, this goddess, both life-giving and death-dealing, but that is her nature. She is contradictory, this goddess, both life-giving and death-dealing, but that is her nature. When Enlil is angry, violent storms tear across the land, destroying everything in their path. Floods come when Enlil wilts it. Droughts come when he withholds the rain. Shamash is the sun god, the god of justice and truth. Every day he rises in the east and travels across the sky, looking down on all that happens in the world below. Nothing can be hidden from Shamash. He sees every deed, hears every word, knows every secret. Because of this, he became the god of justice in the courts. Judges invoke Shamash's name. Merchants swear their contracts by Shamash. When someone wrongs you and you seek justice, you pray to Shamash. Sin is the moon god, Shamash's father, which seems strange until you understand that in the night, the moon rules. Sin measures time for us. By watching his phases, we know when months begin and end. We plant our crops according to his cycles. We celebrate our festivals when Sin reaches certain points in his journey across the night sky. We celebrate our festivals when Sin reaches certain points in his journey across the night sky. There are many other gods, of course. Gods of specific cities, gods of particular crafts, gods of rivers and mountains and storms. The divine realm is crowded with powers and personalities, each one demanding respect and offerings, and we humans, we live our lives in the midst of all this divine activity. We wake in the morning when Shamash rises. We plant our fields when Sin indicates the time is right. We pray to Enlil for rain and to Ea for wisdom. This is our purpose, my friends. We were made to serve the gods, yes, but in serving them we also serve ourselves. The temples we build become centers of our communities. The canals we dig bring water to our fields. The barley we grow feeds not only the gods, but also our own families. The barley we grow feeds not only the gods, but also our own families. And we humans, we live our lives in the midst of all this divine activity. We wake in the morning when Shamash rises. We plant our fields when Sin indicates the time is right. We pray to Enlil for rain and to Eve for wisdom. And in return for our service, the gods give us everything we need to survive and even to flourish. They make the sun rise and set. They bring the rains in their season. They keep the monsters at bay. They maintain the order that Marduk established when he defeated Tiamat. It is a good bargain, I think. Yes, we work hard. Yes, life can be difficult. But we have the gift of existence, the opportunity to live and love and create, to raise families and build cities, to make art and music, to ponder the great questions and tell stories like this one. We are mortal, yes. Unlike the gods, we will die. Our time here is limited, measured in years rather than eternity. But perhaps that makes our lives more precious, more meaningful. The gods have forever. We have only our brief span of days. Look around you at the world the gods have made. and we have helped to maintain. See the temples rising toward the heavens, their ziggurats stepping upward like stairways the gods might descend. See the fields of barley waving in the wind, gold and green and full of promise. See the canals bringing life-giving water from the great rivers. This is what the partnership between gods and humans has created. This is the ordered cosmos that replaced the chaos of Tiamat. This is civilization, that precious, fragile thing that requires constant work to maintain, but that gives meaning to our existence. And yet, my friends, even with this bargain in place, even with humans serving the gods and the gods providing for humans, there have been troubles, for humans multiply quickly. We spread across the land, building more cities, digging more canals, growing more numerous with each generation, and sometimes our very success becomes a problem. There was a time, not so very long ago in the reckoning of the gods, when humanity grew too numerous, too noisy, too disruptive. The gods began to regret creating us. Enlil in particular grew angry at the constant noise rising from the earth. Day and night humans worked and played and argued and celebrated. The sound of our living disturbed the gods' rest. Does this sound familiar? It should, for it echoes what happened with Apsu, who grew angry at the young gods' noise and sought to destroy them. History, it seems, repeats itself, even among the divine. Enlil made a decision. He would wipe humanity from the earth. He would send a great flood, a deluge that would drown the world and return it to silence. The other gods agreed, or at least did not object strongly enough to stop him. But one god disagreed. One god remembered that humans were precious, that they had been made with care and purpose, that God was clever who had created humanity in the first place. He could not stand by and watch his creation be destroyed. What happened next, my friends, is one of the greatest stories in all our lore. It is the tale of the flood, of the one man who survived, of the boat that saved humanity from extinction, of the gods' regret and the new covenant they made with us. But that story is too important to rush through in what remains of this evening. The lamp oil is running low, and my voice grows tired. Tomorrow night, I will tell you of the great flood, of Utnapishtim the survivor, and of how humanity was nearly wiped from the earth but was saved through cleverness and divine mercy. For tonight, rest knowing this: we humans are here by design, created with purpose, given the divine spark through king's blood. We are mortal, yes, but we are also special. We are the beings who bridge earth and heaven, who serve the gods, but also have our own lives, our own joys and sorrows, our own stories to tell. Sleep well, dear friends. Tomorrow brings the tale of the great flood, one of the most important stories our people tell. It is a story of destruction and survival, of divine anger and divine mercy, of the second chance that humanity received when we might have been lost forever. Until then, may Shamash bring you a gentle morning, may Sin light your night, and may Ea grant you wisdom in your dreams. Good night. Welcome back, my dear friends and listeners, to another evening of ancient wisdom and timeless tales. The stars are particularly bright tonight, scattered across the dark sky like seeds cast by a generous farmer. The air is cool and pleasant, carrying the scent of jasmine from the palace gardens. I have my cup of beer, freshly poured, and a few figs to nibble on. Everything is as it should be for the telling of great stories. Tonight, as I promised, we speak of the flood. This is perhaps the most important story in all our lore, for it tells of a time when humanity nearly ended, when the gods themselves regretted what they had done, and when one man's obedience and cleverness saved us all from extinction. It is a story of destruction and survival, of divine anger and divine mercy. It is a story of destruction and survival, of divine anger and divine mercy. Humanity had been living on the earth for many generations since Ea first created us from clay and divine blood. We had multiplied and spread across the land. Cities had grown up along the rivers. Fields of barley stretched as far as the eye could see. Everywhere you looked, humans were busy with the work of living. Everywhere you looked, humans were busy with the work of living. We were successful, perhaps too successful. Our numbers grew and grew. Every year more children were born. Every generation more villages became towns, and more towns became cities. The earth was filled with humanity, and with humanity came noise. Constant noise, the sound of people working in the fields singing as they harvested, the sound of merchants in the marketplaces calling out their wares, the sound of children playing in the streets, laughing and shouting, the sound of craftsmen at their work, hammering and sawing and chiseling, the sound of craftsmen at their work, hammering and sawing and chiseling. Everywhere you looked, humans were busy with the work of living. We were successful, perhaps too successful. Our numbers grew and grew every year. More children were born. Every generation, more villages became towns, and more towns became cities. The earth was filled with humanity, and with humanity came noise. Day and night, the noise rose up from the earth, up through the layers of the cosmos, up to where the gods dwelt, and it disturbed them greatly, particularly Enlil, the god of storms and wind, who had never been known for his patience. Enlil found the noise unbearable. It interrupted his sleep. It distracted him from his duties. It grated on his nerves like the constant buzzing of insects. He would try to rest, but there would be a festival somewhere, with drums and lyres and singing. He would try to rest, but there would be a festival somewhere, with drums and lyres and singing. Finally, Enlil could bear it no more. He called the other gods together in assembly and addressed them with barely controlled anger. These humans we created have become a plague upon the earth, Enlil said, his voice like distant thunder. They multiply without end. Their noise is constant and unbearable. They disturb the peace of the cosmos with their incessant activity. I can find no rest, no quiet, no peace anywhere. Some of the gods nodded in agreement. They too had been disturbed by humanity's noise. Others remained silent, uncertain about what should be done. I propose a solution, Enlil continued. We will send diseases to thin their numbers. We will bring famine to slow their reproduction. We will use drought and plague to remind them that they are mortal, that they exist at our sufferance. The gods agreed to try this. Diseases were sent. Famines came. Droughts withered the crops, many humans died, and the noise decreased for a time. But humans are resilient, my friends. We adapt and overcome. We learn to treat diseases, to store food against famine, to dig deeper wells when drought came. Enlil's anger grew even greater. These measures had failed. Humanity remained a problem. And so Enlil made a terrible decision, perhaps the most terrible decision any god had made since Apsu tried to destroy the young gods. "We will destroy them all," Enlil declared. "We will send a flood, a great deluge that will cover the entire earth. Every human will drown. Every city will be swept away. The earth will be cleansed of this noisy infestation, and peace will return to the cosmos." The other gods listened to this proposal with mixed feelings. Some agreed enthusiastically, glad to be rid of the human problem. Others were troubled, but did not speak up against Enlil's authority. After all, he was the chief executive among the gods, second only to Anu himself, and his control over storms and weather made him powerful indeed. But one god could not accept this. One god could not stand by and watch humanity be destroyed. That god was Ea, clever Ea, who had created humans in the first place. He had shaped us from clay and divine blood. He had given us intelligence and creativity. He had watched us grow and build and learn. He had come to care for us, perhaps even to love us in his way. Ea knew he could not oppose Enlil directly. The other gods had sworn an oath not to warn humans about the coming flood. To break such an oath would be a serious offense, possibly serious enough to lead to war among the gods. But Ea was clever, the cleverest of all the gods, and he knew how to work around an oath without actually breaking it. In the city of Shuruppak, there lived a man named Utnapishtim. You might pronounce his name like this, Utnapishtim. He was a good man, righteous and wise, a king who ruled his city with justice and compassion. He honored the gods with proper offerings and treated his people fairly. He came to Utnapishtim, but he came in secret and in a clever way. He did not appear before the man directly, for that might have been seen as breaking the oath. Instead, Ea spoke to the reed wall of Utnapishtim's house. He addressed the wall, not the man, and said what needed to be said. Reed wall, Ea whispered, his voice like wind through rushes. Hear what I say and repeat it. A great flood is coming. The gods have decided to destroy humanity. Every living thing will perish, but there is a way to survive. A boat must be built, large enough to hold a man and his family and pairs of every animal. Build it according to these measurements. And Ea described in detail how the boat should be built. It should be a cube, equal in all dimensions, both stable and spacious. It should be made of wood and sealed with pitch both inside and out, so no water could enter. It should have 7 decks, divided into compartments. Utnapishtim, who had been inside his house, heard every word that Ea spoke to the reed wall. He understood what the god was telling him, without directly telling him. And he knew what he must do. But here is where Utnapishtim showed the wisdom that made him worthy of saving. He did not immediately begin building the boat, for that would have raised questions. How could he explain to his neighbors why he was building such a massive vessel in the middle of the city, far from any navigable water? they would think him mad. So Utnapishtim went to the elders of the city and told them a careful story. He explained that Enlil was angry with him personally, that he had to leave the city or bring doom upon everyone. He said he would travel to live with Ea in the watery depths, and for this journey, he needed a boat. The people of Shuruppak believed this story, and they helped Utnapishtim build his boat. They saw it as a sad necessity, the loss of a good king to appease an angry god. They brought wood and pitch. They lent their hands to the construction. They worked with Utnapishtim and his family to create this massive vessel. For 7 days and 7 nights they worked without stopping. The boat grew larger and larger, its bulk dominating the city square. It was a massive structure, 5 stories tall, with a roof that could be sealed tight. Inside were compartments for animals and supplies, storage for food and water, spaces for Utnapishtim's family to live. When it was complete, Utnapishtim did exactly as Ea had instructed. He brought aboard his wife and his children and his children's children. He brought craftsmen of every trade, for humanity would need their skills after the flood. He brought animals, too, of every kind, male and female, so they could reproduce after the waters receded. He brought seeds for planting and tools for working. He brought seeds for planting and tools for working. The people of Shuruppak watched all this loading with curiosity, still believing that Utnapishtim was simply leaving on a long journey. They wished him well, pressed gifts into his hands, shed tears at his departure. They had no idea what was coming. When everything was loaded and secure, Utnapishtim and his family entered the boat. The door was sealed from the outside by friends who did not know they were sealing their own doom. And then Utnapishtim waited, as Ea had told him to do. The sky grew dark, not the normal darkness of night, but an oppressive, unnatural darkness that seemed to swallow all light. The air became heavy and still the way it does before a terrible storm. Animals grew restless, sensing something wrong in the natural order of things. Birds fled from the trees, dogs howled in the streets, even the fish in the rivers seemed agitated. And then the flood began. First came the rain, not the gentle rain that waters crops, but rain like the world had never seen before. It poured from the sky in sheets, in torrents, in quantities that defied belief. It was as if all the waters above the dome of heaven had been released at once. But rain alone was not enough for the destruction the gods had planned. Enlil commanded the storm demons to break open the dams of heaven. Adad, the storm god, thundered across the sky with his voice shaking the earth. Lightning struck again and again, so frequently that the darkness was constantly lit with flashes of terrible light. Then the gods broke open the springs of the deep, the sweet water that Ea controlled. The underground oceans that lay beneath the earth were forced upward. Springs burst forth with tremendous pressure. Wells overflowed. The ground itself seemed to vomit up water. And most terrible of all, the gods shattered the barriers that held back the cosmic ocean. Tiamat's salt water, which Marduk had carefully constrained when he created the ordered cosmos, now flooded in. Seawater mixed with rainwater, mixed with sweet water from the deep. seawater mixed with rainwater, mixed with sweet water from the deep. The waters rose with terrifying speed, ankle deep, then knee deep, then waist deep. People fled to the roofs of their houses, but the waters kept rising. They climbed to the temples, to the ziggurats, seeking higher ground, but there was no ground high enough. The waters kept coming, kept rising, kept drowning everything in their path. The destruction was total and merciless. Cities were swept away as if they had never been. Fields disappeared beneath the flood. Forests were submerged. Mountains became islands, then disappeared beneath the waves. Every living thing that breathed air and could not float was drowned. Men and women, children and elders, animals wild and tame, all perished in the flood. Men and women, children and elders, animals wild and tame, all perished in the flood. Even the gods were frightened by what they had unleashed. They had not expected the flood to be so terrible, so complete, so utterly devastating. They retreated to the highest heaven, to Anu's realm, and they cowered there like frightened dogs. They watched the world below disappear beneath the waters, and they began to regret what they had done. Inside his boat, Utnapishtim and his family held on as the vessel was lifted by the rising waters. The boat rocked and pitched, tossed by waves that would have destroyed any normal ship. But Ea had designed it well, and it held together. Inside, in the darkness, Utnapishtim could hear the rain hammering on the roof like 1,000 drummers. He could hear the wind howling like all the demons of chaos. He could hear the wind howling like all the demons of chaos. For 6 days and 6 nights the rain continued without pause. The waters rose higher and higher until they covered even the tallest mountains. The entire world was water, nothing but water, as it had been in the beginning before Marduk separated earth from sky. On the 7th day, something changed. The rain slowed, then stopped. The winds began to calm. The waters, which had been churning and turbulent, grew still. An eerie silence fell over the flooded world. Utnapishtim dared to open a small window in the boat and look out. All he could see in every direction was water, flat grey water stretching to every horizon. No land, no trees, no mountains, just water. For a moment, he wondered if he was the only living thing left in all the world. The boat drifted on the surface of this worldwide ocean. Days passed. Slowly, very slowly, the waters began to recede. They went down inch by inch, foot by foot, as the flood drained back into the deep places from which it had come. Finally, the boat struck something solid. It had run aground on the peak of Mount Nimush, one of the tallest mountains in the world. Here, the boat came to rest, held fast on the mountaintop, while the waters continued to recede around it. Utnapishtim waited, but his patience was running thin. He needed to know how far the waters had fallen, whether there was dry land anywhere, whether it was safe to leave the boat. So he devised a test. He took a dove from among the birds he had saved and released it through the window. The dove flew away, circling in the air, searching for a place to land. But it found nothing except water, water everywhere with no dry land to rest on. So the dove returned to the boat, and Utnapishtim took it back inside. He waited a few more days, then tried again. This time, he released a swallow. The swallow flew farther than the dove had, searching desperately for land. But it too found nothing, and returned to the boat, exhausted. Utnapishtim waited longer, watching each day as the waters slowly fell. Finally he released a raven. The raven flew away, strong and determined. It circled and searched, and this time it did not return. Utnapishtim knew then that the raven had found land, found carrion to eat among the drowned things, found a place to perch. The waters had receded enough. He waited a few more days, then tried again. This time, he released a swallow. The swallow flew farther than the dove had, searching desperately for land. But it too found nothing, and returned to the boat, exhausted. Utnapishtim opened the great door of the boat. He and his family stepped out onto the mountaintop and looked around at the transformed world. Everything they had known was gone. Every city, every field, every familiar landmark had been washed away. The world was like a blank tablet, ready to be written on again. The first thing Utnapishtim did was build an altar. He gathered stones on the mountaintop and stacked them carefully. Then he made an offering to the gods, burning sweet-smelling wood and pouring out wine and placing meat on the altar. The smoke rose up from the sacrifice, rising toward the heavens where the gods dwelt. And the gods, who had been cowering in Anu's palace, smelled the offering. They gathered around it like flies, like people who have been starving and suddenly smell food. You see, my friends, the gods had not thought about what would happen after the flood. Yes, they would have peace and quiet with all humans dead, but they would also have no one to make offerings to them. No one to build temples or maintain them. No one to grow food and place it on the altars. No one to brew beer and pour it out in their names. When they smelled Utnapishtim's sacrifice, the gods realized what they had lost. They crowded around the offering, grateful and ashamed. All except Enlil, who was furious when he saw that humans had survived. How did this happen? Enlil roared. How did anyone survive? Who warned them? Who broke our oath? Ea stepped forward calmly. No one broke any oath, he said. I did not speak directly to any human. If one man happened to be wise enough to understand a message not meant for him, if he was clever enough to save himself and his family, is that not a testament to the intelligence we gave humanity when we created them? The other gods murmured in agreement. They were glad humans had survived. They were glad there would still be offerings and worship. Only Enlil remained angry, but even his anger was fading as he smelled the sweet smoke of the sacrifice and realized how much he had missed it. Marduk, king of the gods, spoke with authority. What is done, he said. Humanity has survived, and perhaps that is for the best. But we must find a better solution to the problem of their noise. We cannot have another flood. That was too destructive, too complete. We nearly destroyed the world itself. And so the gods made a new covenant with humanity through Utnapishtim. Humans would still multiply, but not as rapidly as before. They would still work and make noise, but the gods would be more tolerant of it. Diseases and natural disasters would still occur, but not to the extent of total extinction. The world would have death and difficulty, yes, but also life and hope. As for Utnapishtim and his wife, Enlil came to the mountaintop himself to address them. His anger had cooled into something like respect. "You survived when all others perished," Enlil said. "You were clever enough to understand the warning, wise enough to act on it, strong enough to endure the flood. For this, you deserve a reward. You and your wife shall be made immortal. You shall live forever, but not here among mortal humans. You shall dwell at the far edge of the world, at the place where the rivers meet the sea." And so it was done. Utnapishtim and his wife were transformed, made deathless like the gods themselves. They traveled to the far reaches of the earth and made their home there, living on in peace while the rest of humanity rebuilt civilization from the survivors who came down from Mount Nimush. That is the story of the flood, my friends. A story of destruction and salvation, of divine anger and divine mercy. It teaches us many things. It teaches us that the gods are powerful, but not infallible. They can make mistakes, can act rashly, can have regrets. It teaches us that humanity is resilient, that we can survive even the worst disasters through cleverness and cooperation. But there is more to come in our tales. Tomorrow night, I will tell you of the greatest hero our people have ever known. A man who was 2/3 god and 1/3 human, who built the walls of Uruk that we see around us even today. His name was Gilgamesh, and his story is one of friendship and loss, of impossible quests and hard-won wisdom. For now, rest well. You have heard of how the world was nearly destroyed and how it was saved. Sleep soundly, knowing that the covenant between gods and humans holds, that the order established by Marduk endures, and that though we are mortal, we have our place in the cosmos. Until tomorrow, may the gods watch over you, and may your dreams be peaceful. Good night. Good evening once more, dear friends. Welcome back to our gathering place where old stories find new listeners. Tonight is special, for tonight I tell you of a man who walked these very streets where I sit, a man who built the walls that still stand around our city of Uruk, a man whose name echoes through the ages as the greatest hero our people have ever known. His name was Gilgamesh. I have saved this story for tonight because it deserves time and attention. Gilgamesh's tale is not just about heroic deeds and mighty battles, though there are plenty of those. It is also about friendship and loss, about the search for meaning in the face of death, about learning to accept our mortal nature. It is in many ways the most human of all our stories. So settle in comfortably. Perhaps walk to your window if you have one and look out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights, the gods watch over us still. And somewhere in the dust beneath your feet lies the memory of Gilgamesh, who once walked where you walk now. Let us begin. Gilgamesh was born long ago, after the flood, after humanity had rebuilt its cities and re-established civilization. He was born here in Uruk, and he was extraordinary from the very beginning. His mother was Ninsun, a goddess, wise and beautiful and kind. His father was Lugalbanda, a mortal king of Uruk. From this union came Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. What does it mean to be 2/3 god? You might ask. I confess the mathematics of it puzzle me as well, but the meaning is clear enough. Gilgamesh had more of the divine in him than the mortal. He was taller than any normal man, stronger than 10 men combined. He did not age as quickly as other humans. He could see farther, hear better, move faster. Gilgamesh was born long ago, after the flood, after humanity had rebuilt its cities and re-established civilization. He was born here in Uruk, and he was extraordinary from the very beginning. His mother was Ninsun, a goddess, wise and beautiful and kind. His father was Lugalbanda, a mortal king of Uruk. From this union came Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. But he was not a god. That 1/3 of mortality, that human part of him, meant he would die, eventually. He could be hurt, could feel pain, could bleed. And most importantly, he would one day face death as all mortals must. Gilgamesh became king of Uruk when he was still young. He was a good king in some ways, a terrible king in others. Under his rule, Uruk prospered. He ordered the building of great walls around the city, walls so massive and strong that no enemy could breach them. He constructed temples that reached toward the heavens. He dug canals to bring water to fields that had been dry. He established laws and maintained order. In these ways, he was a king worth having. But Gilgamesh had a problem, a serious problem. He was too strong, too energetic, too demanding. He knew no other man could match him in strength or skill, and this made him arrogant. He would challenge the young men of the city to wrestling matches and always win, often humiliating them in the process. He demanded excessive taxes to fund his building projects. Worst of all, he exercised the king's right to lie with every bride on her wedding night before she went to her husband. This was his privilege as king, but he used it excessively and carelessly. The people of Uruk loved their king for his strength and his achievements, but they also feared him and resented him. The young men of the city prayed to the gods for relief. The fathers of daughters about to be married prayed for someone who could stand up to Gilgamesh. The mothers of the city prayed for a change in their king's heart. These prayers rose up to heaven, and the gods heard them. The gods met in council to discuss what should be done about Gilgamesh. They could not simply kill him. He was the son of a goddess, and besides, he was generally a good king despite his flaws. What he needed was not death, but balance. He needed an equal, someone who could match his strength and challenge his pride. Aruru, the goddess who had helped Ea create humanity, took on the task. She went to the wilderness far from the city, to a place where no human dwelt. There she took clay, as she had done when creating the first humans, and she shaped it with her hands. She made a wild man, someone to match Gilgamesh in strength, but not in civilization. That's the end of our story for today. We'll continue in the next episode. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.